Morning, Luca. Morning, Jason. Morning, Florian.
Hey, Hussein.
How you doing?
Good.
Good. Hey, thanks for joining. I know it's kind of late over in Germany.
Yeah, well, it's 6 o'clock. It's okay.
6 o'clock.
Right before the beer, then. After that.
Where in Germany you are?
I'm in Munich, so
Munich.
okay. South of Germany.
Perfect. Perfect. Okay, so we are in a practice mode right now.
Mm-hmm.
We will record.
Okay.
And then we will do a live on Facebook on our Industry X channel.
All right.
So people can go and look at that.
Mm-hmm.
So these are the what we're gonna do.
All right, super. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All right, she should be seeing my screen. Yes?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Just a reminder, everybody, we've got about 6 minutes per topic area, give or take. So if you've got like 3 or 4 questions, that's probably a minute-ish per question, plus some discussion or whatever around that. So just from a timing standpoint, it's kind of how it's going to work out today. Obviously, Florian and Luca will deeper dive into some of these topics during the follow-on webinars, right? So we don't need to go into a ton of detail this time around, but the goal is to tease it enough to where people are interested. And then we get them back for the deep dive sessions in 2 weeks or 4 weeks, depending on the topic.
All right.
And then Noman, I think on the introduction stuff, right? As you kind of introduce Industry X and, maybe then the transition from that passing over to me is, you can say something about the partnership and then introduce me as the moderator for today. And then we can kind of go from there. And then as we get to each topic area, I can kind of introduce the speakers for that general area instead of going through a big introduction on the front side. Yeah.
Got it.
Okay.
That makes sense. Jason, let's run through the slide. Look at the slides one more time so that
Sure.
everybody is on the same page.
All right, so we'll wait for everybody to get here. You'll kick it off, Noman. You'll say, everybody, thanks for joining. From there, this is who Industry X is. This is why we're here. This is why we were formed. These are the types of things we do. From here, I'll transition. You'll transition over to me, introduce our partner, Industry Reply, and today's moderator, Jason. Thanks. Welcome. This is, my name's Jason. I'm with Industry Reply. Industry Reply is part of the Reply Group. Reply Group is so big. We do so many great things. But what Industry Reply does is we focus on, specific areas: supply chain execution, manufacturing, IoT, and customer experience. And we are the Reply Group that focuses on all Industry 4.0 technologies and methodologies. So we help customers achieve the highest levels of efficiency through comprehensive consulting and technology solutions. So then we'll go here. Noman, for this one, you've got animation built in here. I'm just going to call them all up.
Okay.
Pretty quick.
Yeah.
Okay. Because every other slide, they just pop up. So then we'll talk about this, and I'll transition and say, so what I'd like to do is I'd like to pass back to Noman for a minute. And Noman, can you talk to us a little bit about some of the emerging thoughts that companies are having when it comes to taking on Industry 4.0? And then you can talk a little bit about that. Now, the idea here is, well, hey, Babu, welcome.
Hey, good morning, Jason.
Morning.
Good morning,
Love the background. Love the background.
Thank you.
And then, everybody feel free to chime in on a couple of these topics. I think, I know yesterday when we kind of did a little bit of a dry run through, I think, Luca, you're going to talk about localization just briefly when it comes to the relocalization of supply chain. If there's other, when it comes to renewed focus on value, Florian, maybe you can chime in. Try to just think of other ones that jump out at me off the top of my head. I think those are kind of the two major ones. I don't know, Babu, if there's a topic in here, maybe you want to chime in on just a little bit. Because I think you cover some of this in your slides too.
So just to avoid redundancy, then, I have the 3 questions that you sent, Jason.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so Noman, you'll kind of go through here, and then from here you'll say, all right,
Well,
let's. Yeah.
Jason, just for this slide, the first 3 points I will cover very
Yep.
quickly. Florian can take the renewed focus on value, and
Yeah.
Luca can take the localization. So just
Sure.
okay, we'll just do it like this.
Sure.
Mhm.
Florian, Luca, you good with that?
Yeah. Fine.
Okay. And then Noman, after Luca's kind of done with the localization, then you can say, all right, well, let's continue on and let's talk about the reengineering of operations a little bit. And then you can kind of give your little spiel here on this. And then, you know, I'll kind of transition that as Luca, and I'll put some transition statement in there. I haven't thought of it yet, but I'll come up with one to transition to this. And I'll say something like, Noman, why don't you talk to us a little bit about how Industry 4.0 is helping re-engineer operations, and how are companies harnessing the power of the technologies in their operations? And then you can talk about this a little bit. And then kind of after you wrap up your human capital piece, we'll move into the next piece. And then I'll say, next I'd like to introduce Dr. Chinham. Dr. Chinham's the head of the data.
And now we're recording also. Okay, very good. So we just take a few more minutes, and as people are joining, we'll just take a few more minutes to start the program. I welcome the team here today. Very exciting, and it's going to be a good discussion today on accelerating operations transformation with Industry 4.0. So welcome to the program, and welcome participants, and welcome the panel here as well. Okay. So again, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening for Florian and the people from Germany or Europe. They're watching this program. Again, good morning. So welcome to this program. We are talking today about accelerating operations transformation with Industry 4.0. This is a very relevant and important topic as we move into this industrial revolution. And today we have some of the best experts here who are going to be talking with us on this topic. So first of all, I'd like to talk about our collaboration with Reply Industry. So I welcome Reply Industry on this webinar series and the collaboration that we have created to move forward with Industry 4.0. Reply Industry is one of the pioneers, one of the leaders in Industry 4.0. And we welcome them to join Industry 4.0 ecosystem as technology partners. So I'm very happy, I'm very excited to have them on board. So welcome Reply, and thank you for your leadership and your collaboration here. So I'd like to start the webinar by a quick introduction. The moderator for this webinar will be Jason Miller from Reply Industry.
Jackson Wayne State are doing.
Sure, Jason. Looks like no one is back.
No, I'm sorry about that. So apologize for the disconnection. My
No
internet.
problem. So I think we're still up on the Zoom link. I'm not sure about the Facebook Live, but hopefully we'll be back real soon there. So Noman, if you're back here, can you now talk to us a little bit about Industry X and the partnership with Wayne State?
No, I really appreciate the opportunity to start this webinar series. So Industry 4.0 is about fostering innovation, evolution, and acceleration of operational excellence. And we focus on people, process, and technology. And Industry 4.0 and this data-driven approach is key and fundamental to this whole program. So and we are present on Facebook. We are present on, follow us on LinkedIn, follow us on our website. We have a number of programs that we are launching right now, so stay tuned, and I'm looking forward to this webinar as well. Thank you, Jason.
No problem. And again, for everyone who's just joining us, we're excited here at Industry Apply to be a partner with Industry X and Wayne State University to be collaborating on this new venture with them. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Industry Reply. So Reply is a global system integrator. We've got a network of companies around the world, each company delivering a center of excellence for a variety of capabilities. Industry Reply, with offices in Chicago, Detroit, and Munich, Germany. We are the center of excellence that focuses primarily on delivering Industry 4.0 methodologies, as well as across the various supply chain and value chain needs. This includes supply chain execution, manufacturing and operations, and customer experience. So for those of you who kind of follow the APIX methodology of supply chain and value chain, we help handle data that moves both forward and backwards across the supply and value chains. So as we think about that today, we're going to have some conversations around a variety of topics when it comes to the Industry 4.0 journey and how companies can start off on a journey, and some of the areas that the Industry 4.0 technology is starting to take hold and helping companies accelerate. And what we'd like to talk about a little bit first is some emerging thoughts. And Noman, I want to bring you back in for just a second. And if you can talk to us just a couple of points here. What are some of the emerging thoughts and the emerging areas where Industry 4.0 is starting to take hold?
No, good question, Jason. So right now, there are three main questions that every business is facing right now. Number one, efficiency, cost reduction is very paramount for every business. Number two is the growth in this current volatile and disruptive environment. How can companies grow? And number three is the business model reinvention. So these are the three main thoughts. And companies are looking at, in terms of the cost reduction and efficiency, some of the methodologies, some of the method that we have been using, continuous improvement, Six Sigma, Lean, and all the other tools that we have. I think we're seeing that we can do more with technology. We can do better with applying, especially what Industry 4.0 is bringing to the table for operations. So I think it's very important for us to understand, but also not only for cost reduction and efficiency, but the application of Industry 4.0 for growth of the businesses, the growth of the companies, because we're seeing that where the business model, what used to be mass production, now with some of these tools, we can do a lot size of 1, a lot size of 0. And so this is giving us new ideas for growth and also the business model reinvention. So these are the three main things from my perspective, emerging thoughts, but I welcome the other participants to share their thoughts about what they're thinking and what they're seeing.
You know, let's transition over to Florian really quick. Florian, I know one of the things that you guys do at Industry Germany is really focus on helping customers find the value of Industry 4.0. So can you talk to us a little bit about how, you know, companies are really having this renewed focus on value?
Yeah, so happy to do that, Jason. So I think just wanted to underline what Hussein said, and from my perspective, especially also in Europe now, I mean, what has been a little bit more technological discussion and you know, with a vague understanding of what IIoT, for example, can really bring as a value to industrial customers. Or I mean, over the last 6 or 7 years ago, has pretty much now turned into a really hard discussion on quantifiable value add that needs to come out of this technology. And a very prominent example is for me, Volkswagen with the industrial cloud they're starting. So, I mean, they announced their target that with IIoT across all their plants, they want to take out 30% of their production cost base. So 30 over 5 years. And of course, these are very dramatic statements on really believing in this technology, but with a very strong focus on how can customers generate additional value add on top of what they have today. And this is where then the proof point for this technology comes up. Is it ready to scale, and is it ready to deliver this value? And I think that's the focus prominent now in industry.
Yeah, I think those are good points, and it kind of hits to the next bullet point here, which is the reimagination of technology and how to use technology. I know that there's a use case here in the US where a company is using industrial IoT in their welding and manufacturing process for automotive chassis. And they're looking at almost the same shift left approach that we've used in IT for years in the manufacturing, right? Catch those weld defects early so that you're not having to deal with them completely down the manufacturing line. And then the shift IoT and Industry 4.0 technologies is helping enable that. Another interesting area and another topic, and Luca, I want to bring you in for this one, from a supply chain standpoint, especially globalization, and that's the relocalization from the global back to the more local economy. Talk to us a little bit about globalization and what that means with Industry 4.0.
It's really important. We are seeing that there is a big change about that, because before we moved all our factories far to put all together and distribute something that was produced massively. Now we are going in a direction that the customer, the final user, is the more important for the decision for what has to be produced. And the coordination between what is global produced and what is local distributed, and moving also to local, the production, the final assembly, the final customization of the products, is really important. And as anticipated before, we are going in a data-driven model where all the information coming collected by IoT or collected by multiple touch points during the supply chain are more important to coordinate and orchestrate all the movement between the points that are involved.
No, I think those are great points. And we're going to shift just slightly on this, because I think all these are great points, and we're going to dig into some specific areas here in just a minute. But Noman, I want to bring you back in here for a second, and I apologize as you kind of got pulled out real early. So Noman, talk to us, just a quick introduction of yourself, because we weren't able to do that at the beginning. Your role with Industry X. Talk to us a little bit about your role, and then we're going to go into the re-engineering processes. So Noman, just a quick introduction on yourself if you can, please.
Well, thank you, Jason. I apologize for the disruption, but anyway, I am part of Industry X, one of the founding members. I'm very proud of being part of this this initiative. But in terms of my background, I've been in the industry for 20+ years, worked in product development, strategy, manufacturing, operations, process improvement, automation. So I've been around in many different areas. But last year, when I went to Wayne State and we started to work on this project, we realized that there's a need, based on the emerging thoughts we just discussed, that there's a need for us to do something and create an ecosystem where academia can play a key part, you know? So academia, I think in this environment can play a very key role, because they are like a very research focused, they are very innovative, they have a lot of faculty and resources, and then we have a lot of students that are coming in, and we can really put them on the right track as well. And then when you bring industry and academia and the government together, then we can create a very powerful ecosystem. We can create a very powerful platform where we can use this platform to make impact, to make transformation, to make change that we need. And this is the real meaning. This was the motivation for this Industry X. And I'm glad that Babu is joining me here, and all the other people who were part of this program. And we have a lot of people every day are joining this program. So I'm very excited and very excited to have our partnership with Reply, because with the Reply, what I see is innovation. I see out-of-box thinking. I see technology. I see focus on Industry 4.0. I see focus on operations. And that makes Reply and Industry X great partners. And I'm looking forward to create more impact in the industry. And I welcome people who are listening to this webinar and people who are going to listen to this recording to come and talk to us. And I think we have the expertise, we have the solutions that we can provide some support to the industry right now.
Yeah, and as we talk about pulling together all of these facets, right? Academia and industry experts and technology partners, it really is that trilogy that can help companies that are either starting on their journey of Industry 4.0, or maybe they've already started down that path and they're trying to maybe get over the hump, or they're trying to start realizing value of the journey that they're on. They can really start to see some wins for this. And there's a variety of areas that you have to think about, but you can see wins. And Noman, I want to talk just quickly. We got 3 or 4 minutes here on this topic, but when we talk about this re-engineering of operations and starting to harness the power of Industry 4.0, right? We've talked about, the knowledge, we've talked about the data, we've talked about some of the use cases just briefly already, but talk to us a little bit more about how companies and people are starting to think about this re-engineering with Industry 4.0.
So what I mean by re-engineering, I think the operations, we need to look at operations in a different way. We need to re-engineer our operations. But the foundation is what we've always done. Okay, so we cannot maybe leave the core. So I'm not talking about leaving the core or leaving our core business or the operations. We need to harness the power of the core. So that is the first point I like to start with. Then I like to point out 4 key points that are fundamental in re-engineering operations, and they're fundamental as we move into this journey. Number 1, data is king. We need to realize, we need to recognize this, and we need to leverage data. Because in this, at this time where we can do so many things, and we're gonna listen to Dr. Chinam about data science and analytics, I think data can do really wonderful things. Data can bring the right level of motivation, inspiration, direction, visualization for us to take these projects, for us to make some massive improvements in our business. So that is why data science and analytics is key, is fundamental. That is the first step we need to do. Number 2, we need to cultivate the problem-solving capability within our people. It's very important. This business and the environment we're in, we are not in like 20 years ago or 30 years ago where we used to tell people, we used to instruct people. People need to take charge now. And how people can take charge is by cultivating this problem-solving capability. So we need to inspire, we need to grow them so they can solve problems. So you have the data, and then you have the people who know how to solve problems. And then the third thing is you take full advantage of technology. You bring technology to the fullest into this picture. And again, the technology is a big inspiration. And if you look at the studies, if you look at the research, if you look at the case studies where companies have transformed, technology have and was an inspiration for people, because people want to learn technology. And if you give them technology, give them the tools, I think they will move. So data, problem-solving capability, technology and inspiration. Inspire people, let them go, and you will see wonderful things happen. And this is what transformation is all about. This is re-engineering of operations. And that's what I like to point out here.
No, thank you, Noman. And you talk about a few good points here. And let's transition a little bit and let's specifically focus on the data science and analytics piece. And Dr. Chinham, if we can bring you back in here for just a minute, can you talk to us just a little bit about a couple of things? And what I'd like to start with is really this idea of a data-driven world, right? So for the longest time, we've been collecting data, as you mentioned just a little bit ago. But how is it that we're moving and reinventing ourselves for this adoption of 4.0 and helping that really drive home this need for data in this new Industry 4.0 world?
Sure, Jason. So Jason, you're right. Collecting data is nothing new, right? We have always collected data. Many industries, in particular manufacturing, automotive, we had, so-called factory information systems for decades, right? It's just that the granularity was very low. It was mostly meant for dashboarding kind of applications. How many parts did I produce yesterday? How many good parts did I run? What is my downtime like? Things of that sort. But Industry 4.0 is taking us to the realm of predictive analytics, being able to look ahead, right? And even prescriptive analytics. Is it time to, do some maintenance on a key robot? Things of this sort, right? So it calls for additional instrumentation, might need the right kind of sensors, right? We may have to do edge computing to be able to basically reduce the bandwidth necessary, right? To be able to basically manage all the assets that we have, to be able to hit the kinds of targets that Volkswagen is talking about, right? 30% reduction in manufacturing cost through Industry 4.0. So in that sense, this takes us to new possibilities. We need the right data at the right resolution at the right time to be able to make these kinds of improvements.
Now, and Dr. Chinham, kind of a follow-on to that, why is it important for companies to think about the entire journey and not just look at the data collection piece when they're thinking about Industry 4.0 within their business?
Sure, Jason. Not different from, say, deploying a lean program or a quality program. It's not one size fits all, right? The needs will vary a great deal from industry to industry, firm to firm, and even from facility to facility within the same firm, right? So it should start with what are the business needs? What are the needs for the facility? Am I hurting in terms of downtime? Am I hurting in terms of poor inventory management? Am I hurting in terms of supply chain visibility, right? It is these pain points, these needs that should basically drive the initiative within the facility and within the business. And it often needs a very tailored approach to getting this right.
Yeah, and kind of as we kind of close up this data topics, we've talked about it in a couple of different areas, but what are, in your opinion, some of the couple or two or three major areas that companies need to think about from a data perspective as they start to think about beginning their Industry 4.0 journey?
Sure, Jason. So first and foremost, we need to recognize that this entire journey has to be very deliberate and it has to be holistic, as you stated, right? We need to take a life cycle approach. We should start with very small, focused pilots, celebrate success, learn from these pilots, ensure that we have the right infrastructure, data infrastructure, you have a good team. And it's not just about data science, right? It's one thing to collect the data, curate the data, govern the data and all that. Domain knowledge is extremely important, the most important ingredient to make this work. So technology by itself is not going to do anything for us if we don't make sure that we leverage the expertise that is present within these facilities, within these production lines and things of that sort.
No, absolutely, Dr. Chinham, and I appreciate your inputs on that. And I'd like to transition over to Florian. And Florian, I know that you head up Industry Reply in Germany, and your segment of Industry Reply is very much focused on helping customers find find use cases and quick wins for IIoT. But can you talk a little bit about how companies can initially identify maybe uses for IoT and how to make those initial finds effective within their organization?
Right. Yeah, happy to do that, Jason. Look, I think this is one of the 2 or 3 key challenges that I see for scaling IoT even further now into a productive and normal state, I would say, beyond the hype. And by all means, it's not a simple task to identify a concrete value-adding use case in a highly automated plant like an automotive factory, right? Like Shannon said, it's all about the domain know-how, and typically, the domain know-how needs to be on a detailed level that not necessarily a central CDO has, but rather the operator in front of the press line or in front of the paint shop or in front of the machining center. And I think this is the thought angle where I'm coming from, that any methodology that wants to proliferate and identify use cases should start with the experts. So start to tap into the potential of your people working on a shop floor, being the experts in automotive production, in food and beverage production, and process industries, and give them a means on how they can scalably, quantifiable contribute ideas for use cases and lead these use cases into a process which then ends up with an IoT solution addressing this use case and rolling it out. So my simple answer would be try to activate the experts the customers have and ask them, rather than coming top down with generic use cases which are not replicatable and don't have a concrete value add, and are also then not accepted by the people that need to use these solutions, namely the people on the shop floor again. So that's my short-term answer to that.
No, and I know there's no easy short answer to some of those questions, and that's part of the challenge, right? Is one, even understanding if you're ready for it, plus trying to figure out how to move forward, right? So that brings up an interesting topic, which is organizational readiness. How does a company even know if they're ready to start down this journey of Industry 4.0 and take on an IIoT implementation?
Right. I mean, that's a very, very interesting question, Jason. And again, there's maybe not a silver bullet to that question. I think it takes a lot of, it starts a lot with the attitude to the topic. A lot of customers I've seen over the last 7 years really trying to address digitalization as a shiny CEO type of project, right? We start a team, digitalization is important, central team, reportings, newsletters, and then nothing happens. And I think that's maybe a little bit of mantra or exaggerated view on how you should not do it. You should not perceive IoT and digitalization as another project that goes for 3 months and then we are digitalized and everything's good. It's a change of behavior. You need to change the way you operate, and you need to install a continuous scalable innovation process that produces these small initial incremental use cases which have a concrete value add and show the success, and then continuously drive additional use cases, additional value add, and bring the whole company onto a new level of technology. I think that's the far better approach than the big bang shiny digitalization projects, which are initially very, very pronounced, and then at the end not a lot of results come out. I've seen it too often in the field.
No, Florian, I think that's absolutely the right answer. And I want to skip ahead just a little bit. And there's a million things that are out there for companies to think about. And we're seeing some conversations in the chat about security, and we'll kind of get to that when we talk about the Q&A. But I want to skip to really this idea of, once you're there and you've made the decision, you're starting to move, how to start to not just implement, but to scale and find value in that. So how does a company shift from initial implementation, once they've made that decision to go, how do they move into, how do I scale this and now find more value and really drive effectiveness?
Right. So I think that's for me that's maybe the third challenge that we see currently in the field, that IoT, most of the customers use it to some extent, but only a few percentage, like 3, 4, 5% of the customers really have a use case and start to scale it in a production manner. And if that doesn't change, the whole technology has a problem for me, because at the end of the day, it's about not building a POC. POC is important, but I want to replicate the POC across all my press lines, across all my ice cream filling lines, whatever, right? Mm-hmm. And in industry, scaling a solution is not an easy task. It's a highly complex environment. You have a production environment, I mean, with typically on the line 400, 500 different machine OEMs are built in. And it's not easy to install a new piece of software that does something to that line. And I think that's something where customers can benefit from a very methodology and tool-based support process which manages this complexity of taking one solution stack, bringing that with a very diligent and controlled implementation workflow process into a different production site or the next production site. And the last point I would make to that, I mean, if you want to scale IoT solutions across, industrial customers or production sites, you need to be able to manage solution variants at scale. What do I mean with that? If you build a central solution that fits into your PUC center, and you go to the next plant, maybe even the same machine, but a different firmware version, a different communication standard in the production network, a different port used for communicating out to the plant. So it's not that you can typically identically copy a solution, but you need to make small adaptations that it fits into the environment of the local installation. And this complexity needs to be managed at scale. And I think there's also now ways and methods arising, and I will talk about more of that in my session then, how you can scalably manage that, and with that, bring the whole technology at scale into the field.
No, and that's a great, as they would call it, a tease. And I want to remind everybody that this is the first of a series of 4 webinars, and the next 2 webinars, and we'll talk a little bit about them here in a little bit, but Florian's going to do a deeper dive into the manufacturing operations and manufacturing IoT, along with a couple of other folks from another reply company, Brick Reply, in 2 weeks. So there'll be more information coming out on that, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. But Florian, I appreciate your inputs on this. And manufacturing isn't the only place where Industry 4.0 is taking off. And next, I'd like to introduce Luca Cortinovis. And Luca Cortinovis is my peer and works with me here in Chicago as head of industry here in the US. And Luca, you're really focused on the supply chain side. And we're seeing more and more where Industry 4.0 technologies are starting to get closer and closer and even embedded now into the supply chain. So, we know the world of warehousing and supply chain is always continuing to evolve, but how are newer technologies that are in that Industry 4.0 standards, how are those getting into the supply chain? Where are we seeing those things?
For sure, as anticipated by the other panelists, we are seeing that companies are changing the way to do their business. They are driven from the customer, moving from mass production to customer-oriented production. And in this scenario, also the supply chain is becoming a real active player. It's not more only a cost. To distribute the things is not only a cost, but is interacting with the final consumer. And for this reason, the adoption of new technologies has to be one of the accelerators to going towards to a collaborative supply chain and integrated supply chain with the production. And moving, as example, from the automation that was one of the pillars of the Industry 3.0 to autonomous agent, that we have AGV, we have artificial intelligence applied. We don't have more robots, but more cobots that are collaborating, that are working inside in the plant. And this is applied also inside in the supply chain, in the distribution center, warehouses, but along the whole supply chain. Moving from reaction, data-driven as anticipated by Babu, to pre-action, predictive and analytics that are coming as helping our decision support systems.
It's not just in those instances as well, right? If you think about it, the world's becoming more and more about custom and real-time delivery of products. How have you seen that even customer interaction has changed because of call it Industry 4.0 on the back end? How we're interacting with our customers on the front end has even changed. What can you tell us about that?
The first key for that is our beloved customer are the center of our production now. And they have different way to interact now. They have multiple channels to buy, and when they buy, they can select. They have multiple applications to interact. They have also multiple technology to do that. Thinking about augmented reality, they can customize their product since the beginning. And for this reason, having this kind of connection, also the industry is going more consumer-oriented, forgetting the full mass production, going to lot zero, single batch, single user production. And putting this enormous focus on the consumer, for example, the supply chain is changing completely the way to manage the last mile. The user, the final user, is driving also the possibility to say, I want to deliver in this half an hour that I am at home. And this specific pandemic period is highlighting this in an enormous way, because going at home, going to the consumer, also with cars, with goods that before were delivered only to the dealer, not more. Now they are going to the final consumer. And this is completely disrupting the way to do supply chain.
No, absolutely. And I even think about one that we haven't talked about yet today, even the automated or autonomous loading of trucks, right? So we're now using robots to load trucks to maximize the cube usage inside of trailers, those types of things, or to automate the distribution from, call it a UPS distribution center, into the trucks for that last mile delivery, which you mentioned. So that's a really good point. You know, just one more thing, Luca, it's when we think about all of these things that you just mentioned, right? And we talked about how things are changing from mass production to more custom production. What are some of the new capabilities that Industry 4.0 has added to the supply chain? And you mentioned a couple, but what are some of the driving forces that are really making people and customers think about innovating their supply chain as well as their manufacturing processes with this new Industry 4.0 technology?
And one of the important things was highlighted before. We are going in a direction to data-driven activity, and visibility over the supply chain is one of the key points. But this is, we can say thanks to the IoT first, for example, that giving all information from the factories that are production, and this streaming this kind of information, collecting from the multiple touch points that we have along the supply chain, can enrich our visibility, not only looking the historical data. Just Bob mentioned before, we are not looking how many downtime I had, how many missing shipment I had in my supply chain, but I can look and predict how to distribute better. I can identify cluster of distribution inside in a specific location, depending from the data that I collected and future prediction about traffic. These all information are part of the needed orchestration inside in the industry. And about future capability, for sure, talking small, starting small to go big, because we have to be agile in terms of adopting the new technology. We can't build something that requires so much time to be in place before to be used, because the technology is evolving so fastly that what we have to build is an open platform for our supply chain, open to talk with the other players, open to adopt new technology in a very fast way, because the market is requiring to be reactive and to be really proactive, proposing and be open to collaborate. These are the main point, the main forces that are driven the change in the supply chain.
No, you're absolutely right. And, one of the things that pops in my mind with as strained as supply chains have been over the last specifically 6 months since the pandemic split, I can't think about how many times it would have been nice to have some of that data available to be able to pass back up the supply chain so that the supply chains could be more reactive, whether that was from feeding the manufacturing information so more product could be produced, or feeding the supply chain to make sure that product was repositioned within the network so that it could be ready for that end state distribution. Those are all things that I know we've had customers come to us for and talk about, as well as, customers even pre-pandemic, we're talking about how to modernize supply chains using these type of technologies. So I think those are all great points. And Noman, I want to bring you back in for just a minute. I want to talk about adoption and acceleration of Industry 4.0 from an overall perspective, right? We talked about some of the things to think about, and we talked about, some of the areas where you can think about it. But if you can, talk to us, what does the current landscape of Industry 4.0 really look like? I know customers have been talking about it, customers have tried, but who's been successful? How deeply impactful is this in today's environment?
No, it's a good question. So the state of the affairs are according to a lot of the data that I'm seeing and a lot of the people that that we're working with, everybody agree on the point that Industry 4.0 or technology is important. Okay. As much as, according to a study by Deloitte and MAPI last year, 83% of the manufacturers in US are saying Industry 4.0 is needed. Industry 4.0 is a competitive advantage. Okay. So from the recognition standpoint, there's a huge recognition of this technology. But on the flip side, if you look at the adoption side, and again, looking at the data, looking at the research, a small percent are adopting, and only a very small percent have completed one factory transformation of Industry 4.0. Okay, so like again, I go back to the study, is about 5%, around 5% is the number where companies, manufacturers have transformed one full factory on Industry 4.0. And then if you take a look at maybe what Florian was talking about, the scaling of this technology, that's the next step. So we're talking about like the first transformation, but then the scaling of this. So there, I see there's a huge opportunity in terms of adopting and accelerating Industry 4.0 for operations transformation. This is fundamental. And how can you start? The thing is, I think Industry 4.0 have become like a fad or maybe a buzzword or maybe something which is people are becoming overwhelmed by, okay? But this project can be started in a very simple way. And I love Luca's commentary on the state about agility, about the speed. I think he brought some great points in terms of what can you do in this environment. So number one, you need to start with the right work, value proposition. What is the value? So select what is the right work, what we need to do, okay? So we need to look at the value of work in our factories, in our operations. What is the low value of work and what is the high value of work? We want to do more of the high value of work and we want to automate more of the low value of work. Very simple. Start with that simple thought, okay? Then once you understand that, go to the right workplace. Design the workplace, flow the workplace, and select the right technology for the workplace. Very fundamental second point. And then the third point is not the third point, but it's like always maybe in parallel, we always have to do this, is we need to have the right workforce for this to be successful. If we don't have the right workforce, the right skills, and the right mindset, the culture in the organization, it is very difficult for us to transform, okay? So for me is, we need to think about end in mind. We need to be very collaborative. Luca talked extensively about collaboration, open source, platform approach. We cannot invent or we cannot transform in this environment just taking this challenge or the whole thing by ourselves. We need to collaborate. And this is why we are with Reply right now, because we know that Industry X by itself, we cannot do it by ourselves. Ecosystem is key and people matter. So I'm just gonna close these points here about the adoption and acceleration to our operations.
No, and thanks, Noman. And before we kind of move on, I wanna just kind of echo some of those points, right? Because one of the things whenever you're taking on a new technology or a new set of technologies, there is no hey, I've got the golden answer. So we need to make sure that we're engaging with partners from academia, from practitioners, to make sure that we're looking at this the right way. Because what I can tell you is from our experience here at Reply is that there is nobody who has it 100% right. That's why it's important to have partnerships and collaborations with companies and other people around you that can help you along this journey. So with that said, I want to talk a little bit about some of the things that we've got going on. So there was a question that came up in the chat that I want to address, which is what is the partnership between Reply and Industry X look like? And first and foremost is we want to talk, and we want to get some of the messages out to you guys so you can start thinking about what that Industry 4.0 journey looks like. And in order to facilitate that, we put together a 4-part webinar series, today being the first of them, to really help cultivate some thought processes and some ideas behind accelerating operations and what Industry 4.0 could mean to you. Over the next 8 weeks, so 2 weeks from today and then every 2 weeks, we're going to do another webinar. And in 2 weeks today, we're going to have Florian back along with someone who's actually watching today as an attendee, Giulio Colombo from Brick Reply, to talk about manufacturing operations and talk about IIoT acceleration and how to find those use cases and how to accelerate those. And you're going to see a couple of products that Reply's built that are specifically focused on these two areas. And Florian, I'll give you just 1 minute here to talk about Axelis a little bit and talk about how Axelis can help drive this acceleration and maybe what you're going to talk about a little bit in your next webinar.
Yeah, so thanks, Jason. I'm really excited to talk about that in the next webinar. So what we basically did with Axelis, so Axelis is a cloud-based subscription offering which digitalizes and structures the whole process from IoT use case innovation in the field down to solution management and configuration, and then back with very concrete executable rollout workflows, the installation of the solution on site on different production sites. So what I described before, what the challenges are, how do I find use cases, how do I manage solution variants, how do I roll them out into the field and scale them? This is what Axelis as a tool and also with AI enhancements, additional functionality will facilitate for the customer and thus enable a continuous transformation at scale from where they are today into an IoT world.
Okay, and then also in that webinar, we're going to talk a little bit about the Brick solution, and it's around taking manufacturing operations, connecting your PLCs from your operations line, using edge computing and helping pull data off for a variety of reasons. And Giulio or Marco will talk about that a little bit when we get there too. But I bring these two topics up for one reason, and there was a question that came up in the chat, which was around security, and I believe there was a question, I don't remember who it was from, around security in the chat, and I apologize, I didn't see who it was from. But having platforms that are industry tested and industry proven to ensure that security of data is important, right? And there's a variety of platforms out there: Azure IoT, AWS, their IoT connections, platforms like Axelis, platforms like Brick. Having those tried and tested platforms that have security built into them is one way to address those customer concerns. And I apologize for not seeing who asked that. It was Kamal. Thank you very much from Kamal. Thank you, Kamal. So yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that you have to think about, that like any project, security needs to be embedded through your processes from beginning to end, and it needs to be a consideration just like it is with any project. So thank you very much, Kamal, with that question. I want to come back and continue this idea of the webinars, right? So we talked about what the one on the 10th is going to be. The one on the 24th is going to be Luca coming back with some others to talk even more deeply into the supply chain side of it. So how is Industry 4.0 impacting the supply chain? And I've noticed a couple of folks on the call today, even some Wayne State alum that I know, Jim Braun, works for a company out of Atlanta, is heading up their supply chain practice down there, and as a former Wayne State grad. So I saw him on the call today. Jim, thanks for joining us. So we're going to talk deeply about Industry 4.0 and supply chain, and we'll get into everything from AGVs to automatic picking to line feeding, et cetera, during that conversation. So we'll have Luca back to deep dive into that a little bit more. And then finally on October 8th, we're going to have kind of a wrap up and help tell that story to how can you as a listener to this webinar, as a practitioner out in the field, as a technology leader for your company, how can you start to think of what that roadmap looks like and how we can develop that? And with that, I'm going to turn this back over just slightly to Noman really quick and finish up this idea of what this partnership between Wayne State and Industry X and companies like Reply, what that means for other companies and customers out there. How can other people benefit from what we're providing today?
So the idea is very simple. The idea is to create value in this ecosystem. Okay, so we know that the challenges that the industry is facing, the challenges, the volatility that we have, the disruption that is caused by either the COVID, but pre-COVID, there was volatility, there was disruption, there was a technology acceleration. So we want to do our part, okay? We want to create impact. We want to bring value in this environment, either by doing projects, either by workforce development, venture and IP development, bringing talent, resources, interns, capstone projects to the ecosystem, or help with the grants and funding, that the whole process. So the idea is simple. I think is not a very complex idea, and I appreciate Reply to taking the call from us, okay, to stepping up, to show that their leaders, they are concerned about the situation. They want to make, they want to add value, and they want to make impact in this environment. And this is what the quality of a leader is. This disruption, the crisis, this change requires leadership. We're not living in a mediocre or environment where managers or a mediocrity can produce results. Those era, we had that run for the last 10 years. We were in that environment where average can do better, average can produce results. But when we come to this disruptive environment here, only leaders will survive. And the way the leaders act is they lead. Leaders lead. Leadership is about influence, and I appreciate Reply stepping up and joining our hands and developing and creating this impact in this market. So I thank you, Reply, Florian, Jason, Luca, and all the team which was part of that. Also, I want to mention Jay Mirza, also, who was one of the first contacts that we had. So all those small things that where people take a leadership, okay, at their individual level or a company level, that make the difference. And that is what we need in this environment. We need leaders, come and join us, and then let's make an impact.
Yeah, and thank you very much, Noman. And you know, we're happy to answer any other question you may have. I think we've answered everything that's come across thus far. So as we're continuing to see if there's any other questions that we can answer for anybody, we've got just a couple of minutes left. I wanna echo that. So you know, if you have questions, if you have information that you'd like to receive from either Reply or from Industry X, there's a couple of ways you can get a hold of us. Both companies, we have our LinkedIn pages. On LinkedIn, you can find Industry X, it's industryx.org, or you can find them on LinkedIn for Industry Reply, it's industryreply.com, or you can find our LinkedIn page as well. You'll end up getting in touch with Dr. Chinham or Noman or Luca or Florian or myself or our client advisor Jay that was mentioned a little bit ago. Feel free to reach out to any of us. And just as I think about the Q&A piece a little bit, so the security question came in from Mr. Ghani, Director of Ops down there for Lacerta Therapeutics. So I want to make sure, Mr. Ghani, if you have any additional questions, or hopefully we answered your question okay to that one, you know, just let us know. But again, feel free to reach out to us. You can go to our websites, you can request information there, or you can feel free to reach out to any of us on LinkedIn directly, and we're happy to answer that. So with that said, I'm not seeing any more questions come in. Babu or Noman, do you have anything else that you want to add today? And then I'll come back, I'll wrap back around with the reply side and we'll close.
You know, while we have a few more minutes, I'd like to ask a question to Florian, because I think one of the difficulty that I'm seeing in the market right now is the scaling. So how do you develop talent and resources to scale when you start this journey? What are your thought process about the workforce and the resources, Florian?
Okay, so that's you know, also, of course, one of the key points typically. So, and I have my personal opinion. There are thousands out there, but my personal opinion, what I've seen working is, I think the reality is, so if you go into industry and you want to introduce a new technology like IIoT, it's not like that everybody's waiting for it, really, right? So there are established processes. There are people that work in an environment for 20, 30 years to know everything in and out, and it's pretty hard to convince these resources to adapt IIoT. And sending in, I would say, a team of youngsters and driving that and pulling it over, most of the times is very challenging. My approach would be rather, of course, you need to have talents and people and a team that understands the new technology, that can develop on it, that understands what cloud is, what APIs are. I mean, all these things that you need in order to build an IoT solution. But you need to enable these teams to work together with the experts which are out there, which run an operation and produce day in, day out. And I think that's what I've seen successful. So build up a certain core team for that, and really put them on the shop floor, working together with a press line operator who has the challenge that he needs in order to achieve the efficiency targets, to get from 6 lifts per minute to 7 lifts per minute, and work with him on the shop floor. Let the person in front of the press line also design maybe parts of the UI or describe how I want it. And let them start to work with the solution this core team builds. And then the news spreads, because as soon as this person can do 7 lifts per minute, maybe you can't explain why and what IoT is, but at least he knows that, look, I have a dashboard. By the way, it looks very similar to what I had 20 years before, so it's not a nice dashboard, but I understand it. And this team has done it. Then you have something you can scale and can start to work with. So I think, you know, these technologies it's a lot about, you know, solid, honest work with the people that face a problem. Not so much shiny digitalization discussions. Get your team together, get them out in the fields. Let's get their hands dirty, and then this spreads, and you need to proliferate, and then other people will ask for that. But I think that's a much better approach than the top-down. I build up my own software unit, like a lot of industries, companies in Germany now do, hardware companies. We build now a separate software business. It doesn't leverage really the experience you have, I think, and I would rather for a small, really integrated teams which work together to solve problems. I think that's the better way, in my opinion.
That's a good point. Thank you.
Jason, thank you for the great, being a great host today. Florian, Luca, excellent comments. I eagerly look forward to the next webinar. And Norman, thanks for the discussion.
No, and I appreciate that. Thank you very much, Dr. Chinham, and thank you to everyone at Industry X. Thank you to everybody at Industry Reply for joining today. As a reminder, if you have information, you can reach out to either Industry X or Industry Reply, info@industryx.org, or like I mentioned earlier, you can go to industryreply.com or industryx.org, and we'll be happy to, you can contact us through either of those sites. I know we've already got some chat going on in the chat over here. Happy to have some conversations with you. And until next time, we greatly appreciate everybody joining today. Thank you for your participation. And we look forward to seeing you again in 2 weeks for our topic about how to accelerate your path with IoT. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.